Meddling with RNC leadership, President Biden is pushing the Republican-controlled House to pass a foreign aid package and calling out Trump for his latest un-American comments. But on Capitol Hill, Speaker Mike Johnson and the GOP tackled the not-so-pressing issue of impeaching the Homeland Security Secretary, a move that's being called a waste of time by both sides of the aisle. That's because it is. It does literally nothing. Good morning and welcome to Morning Joe. Well, it hurts
makes them look dumber.
Right.
If that's possible.
Yeah. Oh, it's Valentine's Day and I have a present for you.
Oh, do you really?
Yeah. Should we get it?
Yeah, on-air presentation. Let's do it.
I'm going to do it on air. Should we right now?
No.
Sorry, Joe.
Along with Mika, Willie, and me.
Pass it to me.
It
wouldn't be your choice, Alex?
A host of way too. What do we have here?
He doesn't think I'm Alex.
This better be
just
like.
Pass it to me.
This better be mainstream, okay? This better be like in between the guardrails. If we're doing,
Well, just put it right here.
You know, she's. Remember when she brought the cat?
Yeah.
Out of her purse, as I recall. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want any of that.
Yeah, well, then you might not want to open this, but we'll see.
Willie, we'll see. We'll get to this in a second.
Is it
Willie
shaking?
Also,
is it meowing? Is there anything coming out of the box?
Nothing meowing yet, but I'm very concerned.
Anywho.
Oh, I'm very concerned about that. It's never good. It's never good. So anyway, Willie, we're all nervous.
It's so good. Okay. We'll put this aside. We'll do
So,
this
Willie,
later.
the big news, though, coming out yesterday in the political world, sure to shake up the Republicans. Yet another loss in an off-year election. I mean, the Republicans just continue to lose. They continue to underperform. This continues to happen in the age of Trump. If you're running in a special election in the age of Trump, you're most likely going to lose. I mean, Democrats just Donald Trump has turned the Democratic Party into the Kansas City Chiefs of special elections. There's always a reaction, and there was again last night.
Oh, yeah.
In the district, Republicans should have won again.
Exactly, in a district that Donald Trump just won in 2020, a district that George Santos took in 2022, and now it goes back to the Democrats. They're celebrating this morning after former Congressman Tom Suozzi's special election win in New York's 3rd District. The victory against Nassau County legislator Mazi Pilip flips that district from red to blue, cutting now Republicans' razor-thin majority in the House even closer. Suozzi replaces disgraced former Congressman George Santos, who was ousted from Congress last year. The race seen as a bellwether for November, as Suozzi noted the national implications in his victory in New York last night.
This race was fought amidst a closely divided electorate, much like our whole country. This race was centered on immigration and the economy, much like the issues all across our country. We won this race. You won this race. Because we addressed the issues and we found a way to bind our divisions. But the people of Long Island and Queens are sick and tired of the political bickering. They've had it. They want us to come together and solve problems. So now we have to carry the message of this campaign to the United States Congress and across our entire country. Let's send a message to our friends running the Congress these days. Stop running around for Trump and start running the country. It's time to find common ground and start delivering for the people of the United States of America.
After Suozzi's win last night in New York, the Biden campaign wrote in a statement, Donald Trump lost again tonight. When Republicans run on Trump's extreme agenda, even a Republican-held seat, voters reject them. Trump and the MAGA extremists in the House are already paying the political price for derailing a bipartisan deal to secure our borders and to fix our broken immigration system. Nikki Haley's campaign also reacted to last night's Democratic victory in New York, writing, let's just say the quiet part out loud. Donald Trump continues to be a huge weight against Republican candidates. Until Republicans wake up, we will continue to lose. Time for a new generation of conservative leadership that doesn't turn off the American people, end quote. Donald Trump, as you can imagine, blamed anyone but himself for the loss, calling Pillip, the Republican candidate, a, quote, very foolish woman, and saying his MAGA supporters stayed home again yesterday. So, Joe, I think I misspoke. I said Trump won in 2020. I meant Joe Biden won by 8 points in 2020. Then it flips to Santos, a Republican, by 8 points in 2022. And now this is looking like another 8-point win or so for the Democrat Tom Suozzi, a known entity there, a guy people trust. The issues were immigration, which he leaned into and said, yes, we have a crisis. Yes, we have to do something about the border, and leaning into the issue of abortion as well.
Yeah. And here's the thing that we've been talking about every day over the last week or two that has real world implications. And that is that there was a resolution to the southern border that would have stopped illegal immigrants from streaming across the southern border, that would have stopped fentanyl that's killing American kids from streaming across the American border, crime along the American border, and now in New York City we're hearing all of this could have been stopped by a deal that Republican James Lankford put forward. But Donald Trump told the Republicans not to do it. And so there's going to be chaos at the border for the next year because of Donald Trump. And it had an impact in this race. Tom Suozzi was on the defensive on the issue of immigration until that happened. And when that happened, when Donald Trump killed the bill, the reporters up there say the entire issue turned on its head. Suozzi leaned into it, and he won on the issue of immigration. Stop for a second, everybody. Listen to what I just said. A Democrat won on the issue of immigration. I was so surprised when I was there. I'm so surprised now that there are politicians that think they can do whatever they can do in Congress and it won't catch up to them. Always shocked there because it always caught up with them. And I'm still shocked that these MAGA extreme Republicans and the Speaker of the House are stupid enough to believe that you can openly say, we're going to let fentanyl come across our border for the next year. We're going to let illegal immigrants come across our border for the next year because Donald Trump says, blame me. And we're going to do it. And it has real world implications. Republicans lose again. 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, last night. And they aren't just losing because the stars are aligned against them. They're losing because of one self-inflicted Trump wound after another. This is just the latest chapter and verse of that, Willie.
And voters are smart. They see through the nonsense, which is that Pillip, the Republican candidate here, opposed that bill and said, we've got to do something about immigration. We've got to do something at the border, to which Tom Suozzi says, I support the bill that was just put in front of us, a bipartisan bill led by a conservative Republican. And by the way, we'll talk about this in a minute. Republicans in the House continue down this path now without supporting foreign aid because they say they want something done on the border, which was just done over in the Senate. Let's go over to the big board. NBC News political correspondent Steve Kornacki is standing by for us. Steve, so how did Tom Suozzi do it?
Yeah, I mean, basically, he reversed what went wrong for Democrats in 2022. Take a look here. You see just about all the vote counted here, a few more to trickle in. But Suozzi essentially with an 8-point advantage here. Remembering that this district is mostly on Long Island. What you see right here is Nassau County, enormous county, New York suburbs on Long Island. And there's also a touch of the district here that's actually in New York City. It's the far edges of Queens. It's a part of Queens that is kind of a little bit more suburban in nature. So this really is a classic suburban district. And again, the vast majority of the vote coming out of the Nassau County portion of the district. And here it's significant because Tom Suozzi, you could see, won Nassau by a 5-point margin last night. When Republicans won this seat, when George Santos won this seat in 2022, Santos won Nassau County by 10 points. In Nassau County also, there's been a lot of red waves happening in Nassau County over the last couple years. Republicans locally won the county executive's office back in 2021. They won control of the county legislature. You know, a lot of counties around the country have boards of commissioners. On Long Island, they've got a county legislature. Republicans have control of that. You know, Nassau County and really Long Island itself and the suburbs to the east in New York City in 2022, that's where the red wave actually hit. It missed in a lot of places of the country. That was the headline story from the 2022 midterms. Democrats had a good night. But one reason the Democrats didn't have an even better night in 2022 and actually retain control of the House was the 3rd District of New York and Long Island itself. So you could see Suozzi in what has become pretty hostile political terrain in the last couple of years for a Democratic Party, actually took a major county here. He used to be the county executive, used to be the congressman, and he took it from a Republican double-digit win 2 years ago, and he won this portion of the district, the lion's share of the vote, by 5 points last night. And again, it adds up to about an 8-point win district-wide for Suozzi. And when I mentioned this red wave that hit Long Island in 2022, I think that's one of the sort of significances of this special election in the national context last night, because let me just take you around some of the districts in the area. These are the 2022 results. As we say, George Santos won this district by 7.5 points. The 3rd district. Go south to the South Shore of Long Island, the 4th district. How about this one? This is a district that was won by a Republican in 2022, Anthony D'Esposito. This district voted for Joe Biden in 2020 by 14 points. This was one of the biggest shockers of the night in 2022 for Republicans and Democrats, the fact that a Republican came in and won the seat that Biden had won by 14 points. These two districts in the eastern end of Long Island, Democrats thought they had a chance of picking off from Republicans. Republicans won them both. Remember this one in 2022? This was Sean Patrick Maloney, the 17th district, the chairman of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, ran the entire Democrat strategy for the House in 2022, lost his own district in New York. That was a gain for Republicans. And then you go up to the Syracuse area. This was a district where a Republican retired. Democrats thought it was a golden pickup opportunity. They fell short here. It's all a long way of saying, I have just shown you 6 districts in New York in 2022 the Democrats believed they had a shot at. They went 0 for 6 of them. If they'd won 5 of them in 2022, they actually would have retained control of the House of Representatives. You can argue Democrats lost the House because of New York and because of districts like the 3rd in New York last night. And so I think that makes it extra significant that in one of those districts where the red wave actually hit in 2022, New York's 3rd congressional district, Democrats went from losing by 8 in 22, a 16-point swing, to winning by 8 last night.
Steve, are you surprised by the margin at all? Polling had it neck and neck for the most part. There was a huge snowstorm, of course, yesterday, which may have affected turnout to some effect. But 8 points is a pretty big spread.
Yeah, no, I think so. It was probably on the higher end of what folks were expecting. You know, as we say, it was a 5-point win. This is the 2022 result. I'm wondering, why is Zimmerman on there? It was a 5-point win for Suozzi in the Nassau part of the district. He really got a big margin in the Queens portion of the district here. He won it by about 23 points. Democrats had only won the Queens portion of the district by 4 back in 2022. But I do think there's a turnout story here as well. It kind of meshes with the national story we've been telling for a few years, because there are some pretty big demographic differences between the Queens portion of this district and the Nassau County portion of this district. When you're talking about Nassau County, as I say, obviously it's quintessential suburbia, the North Shore of Long Island, which is in this district right here. A lot of really wealthy towns there, a lot of towns with very high concentrations of college degrees. And we have been talking for a number of years now. This is really a generation-long story in American politics about the Democrats really running up margins, massive margins, bigger and bigger each election among college-educated voters. And this Nassau County portion of the district is just awash in that type of voter. And I think when Joe's talking about the success Democrats have had in special elections the last number of years, one of the things that's powered that is that type of voter, that college-educated Democratic voter, has become more and more activated and engaged politically and seems incredibly energized to vote in any kind of election that takes place. And I think has given Democrats these special elections a real turnout advantage. And so I think it was significant last night. Right now, the number may go up, but right now, 85% of the vote last night came out of Nassau County, and 15% came out of Queens. And how is that different? Well, in the 2020 presidential election, right, that was 80% from Nassau County and 20% from Queens. So it was a 5-point jump here in the share of the vote that came out of Nassau County, which, again, I think it speaks to those suburbs, especially those suburbs that are densely packed with voters with college degrees who've been trending Democratic. I think they were probably on fire in Nassau County yesterday. Maybe not as much on the Queens side of the border here, but that would be consistent with a story we've been seeing nationally for a while now.
Right, and you look at these numbers, Jonathan Lemire. Look at those numbers that we have up right now on the big board, that now 85% of the vote came out of this area. And these are the type of people, just like rural America has been breaking more for Trump, these sort of areas have been breaking more for Democrats and for Biden. And when people ask, well, what's the difference between the polls and Election Day? Why do you think that Biden's going to outperform? When they ask me, I tell them this. I said, when it is time to go vote, people who want to send a message to Donald Trump, who want to keep Donald Trump out of office, they'll weather snowstorms, they'll weather sleet, thunderstorms, lightning, no problem. They're going to go out and they're going to vote against Donald Trump. And this is, again, what I keep saying to my former Republican friends, my former members of the Republican Party. They're still my friends, but members of the Republican Party. It's like, you don't understand. Still, it's taken you 7 years of losing, and you still don't understand. That going all the way back to 2017, when we talked about those women that were standing in long lines in the rain in Virginia just to send a message in 2017. They won the governorship, and also they shocked the political world by what happened in the assembly seats. They still don't understand. Let's look at those numbers again, if we can put them up. 85% of the vote came from this part of the district. They even outperformed what happened in 2020 because they are that energized and that engaged to send a message to Donald Trump. And that's going to happen across the country again this year. Jonathan Lemire.
Yeah, Donald Trump is such a turnout driver. We know for his base, but just as much people turning out to vote against him, who will brave snowstorms on Election Day, but also importantly are so excited to vote against him, they vote early. They vote by mail. And that was a huge advantage for Democrats in this race. And we know that Trump has railed against that in previous elections, that these college-educated voters are just so repulsed by what they see from Trump and so turned off by what they see as the Republicans refusing to actually govern. And that has been on full display this week in Washington, where they're standing against the border bill, standing against the Ukraine bill, but yet proceeding with the impeachment of the Homeland Secretary Mayorkas. A few other things at play here in this particular race. Suozzi leaning into the migration issue, saying, look, Republicans killed that bill. And it seems like voters responded to that. The Republican candidate, sort of a flawed one, didn't do much media, sort of mysterious background, had the IDF background, the Israeli military, that I think probably played a little better a few months ago before sentiment about the war started to change in recent weeks. Abortion, less of an issue perhaps in this race than others, but we know that's going to loom large come November. And it's going to be about the suburbs. We know that. This is, yes, as Steve said, a quintessential suburban county. It's Nassau County, the birth of the suburbs, basically. And that's going to be replicated in the suburbs of Philadelphia, of Atlanta, of Phoenix, of Milwaukee, of Detroit. And that's what's probably going to decide this election in November as well.
And by the way, we may see a replay of this election in a few months. This is a special election, of course. Tom Suozzi will head to Washington immediately, and then they may run it back again in the fall. NBC's Steve Kornacki, thank you so much. As always, let's bring in former White House Director of Communications for President Obama, Jennifer Palmieri. She's co-host of the MSNBC podcast, How to Win 2024. Jen, an appropriate title for our conversation here, How to Win in 2024, which is Tom Suozzi leaning in, perhaps providing a roadmap, leaning into immigration. It is an issue that voters across the country say is at or near the top of their concerns, saying, yes, we have a problem, and that's why I support this bipartisan deal that was out there, talking some about abortion, talking about the economy. What do you take away from a pretty convincing win, as I said earlier, effectively a 16-point swing. George Santos won by 8 2 years ago, or less, actually. Now an 8-point win for Tom Suozzi.
I mean, the amazing thing about this is that what we're talking about is we're used to special elections where we say, well, a Democrat won big because of abortion. And a Democrat won big because of immigration.
Yeah. Immigration.
Immigration, because of the Democrats' biggest vulnerability, supposedly biggest vulnerability. And, I mean, if you live in this area, it was non-stop, constant ads about immigration. Suozzi went on the offense. Because she attacked him on immigration. He came back. He did an ad to defend himself. He did an ad to go on offense and say that we need to do more. I'm going to do that. And I mean, it's one thing to have a roadmap to win by use, but because people are concerned about abortion rights, but to have a roadmap to win over immigration on the day, this happens the day that they go back and impeach Ali Mayorkas for no reason and not pass and don't do anything to pass a border security bill. It's like, it was pretty fitting end for that day in the House Republicans.
Jen, moving forward, I mean, it seems the Biden campaign and Democrats have two key issues that Americans can feel right now. They can comprehend completely as it pertains to their own lives right now: immigration and abortion. There's also foreign policy, where Joe Biden has a lot of accomplishments, but those, for a lot of Americans, might be a little bit out of the realm of what they're thinking about day to day. Same with the bipartisan legislation, job creation, things like that seem more nebulous, doesn't seem to maybe touch the American voter's psyche. But now we have two. And I think one of them will drive women out there like there's no tomorrow.
Well, yeah, I mean, abortion rights, it wasn't, Lemire said this, it wasn't as big of an issue here. I just think in New York, even though she was, even though Philip was not pro-choice, people just don't have a sense that in New York, the New York State Legislature, Governor of New York, is going to get rid of abortion rights. It's just not as prevalent. There was a third-party group that ran, or a super PAC that ran ads about it, but it's just not as prevalent as it is in other parts of the country. So when you add Democrats being able to win a race where immigration is the #1 issue, and partly that's because it's close to New York City. Migrants are a big issue in New York City right now. I don't know that it will be as prevalent an issue in other places, with the advantage that Democrats have on abortion rights. It seems like Suozzi really cracked a code that Democrats could, that they can model elsewhere. And that this stuff, I mean, Joe said this earlier, like, this stuff breaks through. One thing that I saw, one of the NBC reports from yesterday and talking to voters, people want, they don't like the fact that Republicans haven't gotten anything done. They don't like the fact, they see that Republicans are just playing games in D.C. and focused on doing things like impeaching Ali Mayorkas and not passing a bipartisan border bill. That stuff is catching up with people.
And it's been a do-nothing Congress from the beginning. If you look at the numbers, just data. If you just look at the data, they passed less legislation. They've done less than any other House this session in a generation. And not only are they doing nothing, they're going out of their way to actually kill compromise. So I loved hearing about how voters, and Steve talked about this, and Suozzi talked about this. Voters want to get things done. They want to elect people that get along with other members of Congress, that can actually be constructive, and instead of getting things done for Donald Trump, are trying to get things done for their constituents and for America right now. These House Republicans, and man, if you're a House Republican this morning, you've got to be freaked out. You're not going to retain the majority unless things start changing radically soon and you start actually working to get things done. But what a message voters sent last night. Again, on the night that the House impeached Mayorkas, the same House that refused to close the border, refused to stop fentanyl from streaming across the border, refused to stop illegal immigrants from streaming across the border. Yes, that House. They're the ones who are now one step closer to a Democratic majority. because of what happened last night.
All right, coming up in 1 minute, President Biden denounces Donald Trump's comments on Russia and...
Big countries stood up and said, well, sir, if we don't pay and we're attacked by Russia, will you protect us? I said, you didn't pay? You're delinquent? He said, yes, let's say that happened. No, I would not protect you. In fact, I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want. You got to pay. You got to pay your bills.
He said if an ally didn't spend enough money on defense, he would encourage Russia to, quote, do whatever the hell they want, end of quote. Can you imagine a former president of the United States saying that? The whole world heard it. The worst thing is he means it. No other president in our history has ever bowed down to a Russian dictator. Well, let me say this as clearly as I can. I never will. For God's sake, it's dumb, it's shameful, it's dangerous, it's un-American. Donald Trump looks at this as if it's a burden. When he looks at NATO, he doesn't see the alliance that protects America and the world. He sees a protection racket. I know this. I will not walk away. I can't imagine any other president walking away. For as long as I'm president, if Putin attacks a NATO ally, the United States will defend every inch of NATO territory.
Well, you know, Joe Biden and most intelligent people, when they see NATO, they see the alliance that took down the Soviet Union. And that's why Vladimir Putin hates it. And that's why Donald Trump hates it, because he wants to, he wants to stay in Vladimir Putin's good graces. But here again, you have to go back to not just what Donald Trump said, not just the un-American drivel that sputtered out of his fat Elvis's mouth. You have to look at the fact of how he set this up. He felt the need to make up a story, just completely make up a story. A leader of a big country said, sir, first of all, there's so many things wrong with that. So many things really wrong with that. Leader of a big country, please. And then would say, sir, please. Not how it works at any of these places. And nobody would ask the question, what if we don't pay our dues? Because that's not how it works. And everybody in foreign policy world, everybody in NATO knows that's not how it works. It's not, quote, dues. It's not what I made them pay their. That's just so ridiculously stupid. And by the way, if you look at the contributions Europe has made since the beginning of the Ukraine war, Donald Trump, he can shut his mouth. He's got nothing to say on this point because it's the Europeans that just threw in $54 billion to keep Ukraine afloat. And it's idiots like, well, I'll just say, like some certain Republican senators and members of the House. I do want to say this really quickly, and I would ask Alex, don't yell at me, please.
Why?
What just shakes me up when Alex yells at me in my ear.
I'm upset.
I'm a gentle soul.
Yeah, well, I have a present for you.
No, that scares me.
It's Valentine's Day.
I'm a gentle soul. Let me see if I can find this. Okay.
You're gonna love it.
So let's talk about the honor roll here, Willie, and I'm dead serious. The Republican senators who stepped up to support America, to support America's allies, to support Israel, and to support Ukraine. I'm so grateful for Senators Boozman, Capito, Cassidy, Collins, Cornyn, Kramer, Crapo, Joni Ernst, Grassley, Hoeven, John Kennedy, Moran, who gave a very impassioned speech on the floor. God bless him. Murkowski, Risch, Romney, Rounds, Sullivan, Thune, Tillis, Wicker, Young, and yes, Senator Mitch McConnell. So obviously there have been a lot of Republicans, Willie, who have done Vladimir Putin's bidding. Very grateful for those Republicans who stood up. And, sort of what John Thune said, and I won't say exactly what John Thune said in a closed-door meeting, but just stood up and basically told everybody to stop being wimps, to stand up defend our allies, and do the right thing. And these Republican senators, we should all be very grateful that they did just that.
They did, and there's a group of them that did not, who quiver under threats from Donald Trump, of course, and have said with straight faces, I'm not going to do anything for Ukraine until we can do something about the damn border. They serve in the United States Senate that just came up with the deal for the border. I know we're a broken record, but this is their entire argument.
No, they own it.
Last week, there was a bipartisan deal led by James Lankford, a conservative Republican from Oklahoma, among those who voted against it. And, Joe, it's taking now, I have to say, a strange turn. We heard Ron Johnson yesterday offering praise for Vladimir Putin.
Yeah.
Now Republican Senator Tommy Tuberville blaming
They're praising Vladimir
scary.
Putin.
Praising Putin and blaming the United States. The United States for Russia's war against Ukraine. In a radio interview yesterday, Tuberville pointed the finger at America and expressed sympathy for Russian President Vladimir Putin.
But we forced this issue. We kept forcing NATO all the way to Eastern Europe, and Putin just got tired of it. He said, listen, I do not want missiles on my border from the United States of America. It'd be like Russia coming to Mexico and putting missiles in Mexico. I understand what he's talking about. You can tell Putin's on top of his game. One thing he said that it really rung a bell is the propaganda media machine over here. They sell anything they possibly can to go after Russia. They can't win. It's not going to happen. Somebody needs to negotiate. Donald Trump will have it over with in a matter of weeks.
Putin is on top of his game,
Wow.
says United States Senator Tommy Tuberville of Alabama, talking about the murderous dictator who launched an unprovoked war against Ukraine, killing civilians for 2 years now.
Committing atrocities across Ukraine. Recently just killed an entire family in their home. What is he talking about?
What do you do with that?
What do you do with that?
Those you've got a senator from the state of Alabama that is parroting Russian state media talking points, attacking the United States, blaming the United States for Russia's invasion.
Our military.
Russia's invasion of a sovereign country who was not a member of NATO. And we had deliberately not made them a member of NATO. And then you go on, Jonathan Lemire, and you hear Tuberville talking about Vladimir Putin being at the top of his game, attacking American media as propaganda and not hearing. I mean, that he and Tucker Carlson are lined up. And again, I don't know when being pro-Russia, being pro-KGB, being pro-invasion for a guy who is a war criminal. Like, do they love that in Demopolis? Are they all about, do they have Putin fan clubs down in Fairhope? I know Alabama pretty well, and the Alabama that I knew were all, gee, they're kind of Reagan Republicans. They believed in a strong America. They didn't love Russian dictators. But here Tommy Tuberville is parroting Russian propaganda talking points, just flat out parroting them. And this is the same guy that all of our military leaders said was undermining the readiness of the United States Armed Forces for about a year. This guy is bad for America's military. This guy is bad for America's strength. I mean, all you have to do, just to ask people who were serving in uniform, and they'll tell you.
Yeah, the Kremlin couldn't have scripted those remarks any better in that radio interview. And let's recall, let's to be said again, Russia, this is an unprovoked invasion of Ukraine. After coming in the last decade or so, Putin also invaded Crimea, Georgia. This is someone who has tried to expand Russian territory and power not because of his response to NATO, but just because he wants to rebuild the former Soviet Union. And there is this sort of weird Putin praise, this cult that now exists, not among all Republicans, but this sort of extreme MAGA. There is a small segment that views Putin for the masculinity, the hyper-Christianity, the frankly, homophobia, things about Putin that appeal to them. And it's all because they're taking their cues from Donald Trump. That Donald Trump has set the tone from his time in his first campaign when he defended Putin killing people because the United States did it too, to, of course, his time in office.
Well, Jonathan, you were talking about hypermasculinity. I was brought back to our interview with Donald Trump in December of 2015 when he was praising Putin and said how great Putin was. Like, does Tommy Tuberville and do these other Republicans, they also praise the fact that he assassinates political opponents? Do they also praise the fact that you have a Wall Street Journal reporter who is still being captured and still, living in gulags? Hey, what does Tommy Tuberville say about that? What does Tucker Carlson say? What do any of them say about the fact that Evan is still in a Russian gulag? A Wall Street Journal reporter still in a gulag, and you have Tommy Tuberville and you have Donald Trump carrying Vladimir Putin's water. I mean, and by the way,
after he put a hold on military promotions here in the U.S.
Exactly, and how remarkable, Jonathan, and we're showing these pathetic, sad, weak pictures of Donald Trump from Helsinki, which you ought to retell that story as well. But how shocking that you had to say, in response to a senator blaming the United States of America for Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine, you had to say, well, of course, we all know it was not the United States' fault for Russia invading Ukraine. And I mean, the fact that you had to clean up a Republican United States senator's words who was blaming the United States for Putin invading Ukraine shows just how sick this ultra MAGA brand of republicanism is. We already showed the 17 patriotic Republicans who still believe that we support our allies, who still believe we support NATO, who still believe we support Israel, who still believe that they belong to a party that still has as one of its former leaders, Ronald Reagan. Mm-hmm. They haven't forgotten who they are. They haven't forgotten what they believe because of Donald Trump. They actually voted for freedom, and they actually voted for Western democracy with that vote.
Yeah, they did, and that vote likely gets them nowhere because the House seems pretty clearly not to take it up because Speaker Johnson taking his orders from Donald Trump. Tuberville, weaken American military preparedness. Everyone you speak to at the Pentagon says that. And Donald Trump is weakening the United States and its allies' ability to stand up to Russia by what he said over the weekend, saying, go ahead, Russia, go ahead and invade these NATO countries if they don't pay. I won't do anything about it, which President Biden deemed yesterday as un-American, and rightly so. And yes, you just showed the footage there of Trump's Helsinki summit in 2018 with Vladimir Putin. I asked Donald Trump who he believed. The U.S. intelligence agencies, all of whom concluded that Putin and Russia interfered with the 2016 American election, or did he believe Putin? And he made it very clear he sided with Putin, and everything he has said, including praising Putin as smart, praising his decision to invade Ukraine, has only continued that thread, and that's what we'd be looking at were Trump to take office again.
All right, joining us now, congressional investigations reporter for The Washington Post, Jackie Alemany. Amid all of this, Jackie, where does the aid package stand?